On today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to increase your consulting fees.
Cause damn, I was built to last. You move slow and I move fast, and that's facts. Only I can make a change. Slowly take a step today. I will never be the same, cause that's what it takes.
Welcome to Your Consulting Podcast. My name is Russell Pearson, and this is episode number 5. Today we're going to be talking about how to increase your fees. And to get straight into it, really the concept comes around because as a consultant, we are incredibly busy. There's limit on how much work we can do. So we can stay a practice, whereas the profitable enterprise that runs around us, or we can actually move to being a consulting business, which is the profitable enterprise that runs without us. But the majority of people who are looking for a lifestyle consulting business, the consulting business that actually gives them the freedom they want, are tending to pick that practice, because to build a business that actually does run without you can be a very, very different journey than the one where you're working in consulting and actually just getting good fees, high profit, and actually flexible working hours. So today I want to talk about increasing those fees, because we all know as consultants we can be quite busy, which means that there are a certain amount of clients that we can work with at any one time without actually getting employees or other consultants on and partnerships and the like. But it means that there are only so many clients that we can take on at any one time. So rather than increase the amount of clients that we're bringing on, we can look to increase our fees. Now, funnily enough, here in Australia, and then different numbers all around the world, but the benchmark tends to be that 80% of all businesses are, believe it or not, turning over, actually have a revenue of less than $120,000. Now, $120,000 can be a reasonable wage for somebody, but it's incredible, really, this fat bottom of business that we have in this country. And the same thing does tend to be reflected through a lot of Western countries. The $120,000 mark is amazing, and most consultants are looking and obviously getting higher fees than that. But there does tend to be this glass ceiling, and the glass ceiling is often created by us, because we are the masters of our own destiny. We are the ones that are actually charging the fees that we are charging, and so really the decision on what we charge is very much up to us, and I will get to that in just a moment. But there are definitely consultants that I'm speaking to who will say to me, I couldn't possibly charge more. And then on review of what they are charging, they would be charging middle of the road rates. All right. Now, why would it be impossible for them to charge more? Well, because the general market charges this amount or pays this amount. The delivery of those services tend to be benchmarked at those amounts. But the reality is there are two things that can change very, very easily. Number one, get better at the sales conversation, because a lot of those sales conversations that consultants are having are a proposal to a referral without really good quality conversations that enable you to charge far, far higher rates. And those far higher rates really come from, instead of looking at the service that you provide or looking at the activities that you're doing, or even the project that you're going to be working on, look above that. Actually chunk up and start looking at the outcomes that you're providing for that individual or that organization, right? What is the outcome of the work that you're going to be doing? What is the outcome that is ideally measurable that you're going to be providing? Okay, so looking at outcomes is a far more profitable way to actually look at any engagement, no matter how small the project might be. What is the outcome of this project? What is the outcome of this system? What is the outcome of this advice? And by getting clear on the outcomes, we actually increase the value of what we deliver just simply through perspective. We actually increase what it means for the organization. It actually fits far closer into the purpose of the work that we're doing. But it's all fluffy unless we actually make it accountable. And so that's really that second step. To increase our fees, right, we need to make them tangible to that outcome. What is the dollar figure that we're providing through this outcome, and what is the gap from where they are now? it could be for many organizations in the millions, if not tens of millions, simply based off some small amount of work that we do. Very small, but powerful work that we do. And so understanding our value sitting in that space means that if we're delivering, $10 million worth of increased value, then what is the contribution for us? What is the value of the work that we do? Now, looking at Alan Weiss's book on value-based fees, a number of other authors on the similar subject, there are bandied around a few numbers that we can start playing with. And for those who haven't heard them before, let's talk about it. So 10 times value, that tends to be something that people talk about. 20 times value. So let's say that if we're able to get a $10 million return, let's say if we're able to get a $100,000 return, then really 1/10 of that is $10,000. So the engagement, no matter how long it's for, right? Not talking hourly rate, no matter how long it's for, the value of that engagement conservatively is going to be $10,000, right? That's in the 10-to-1 ratio. Now it's interesting because if I was to offer you, let's talk to you listening right now, right? Have a think. If I could guarantee you $100,000 return, what would you pay for that $100,000 without having to put in any more effort, without having to put any more costs in? Because it's the increase we're looking for. We're not just going to get a higher revenue but higher costs, right? What would you be willing to pay? Now, I've asked that question many times, and often people will say 30% or 70%. Some will even say 90%. But that 10% is very conservative. All right. So us going in with 10% to the outcome is a softer way to play it. Now, why do we do that? Well, that's the bigger question, isn't it? Because it really comes down to our confidence in the result. A lot of people don't like guarantees, and I can understand why they don't like guarantees. There are multiple factors that come toward an outcome. There are multiple people who could be involved in getting that outcome. But in understanding that, as an advisor, as a person who is incredibly good at what they do in the consulting space, you know that it is your responsibility to manage that outcome. Now, what does that mean? Sometimes that means having the right people in place. Sometimes it means having the right processes in place. Sometimes it means moving people's beliefs, whether they be limiting or even positive beliefs, motivations, or whatever it needs to be to get an outcome. Now, once you've done that enough, once you've done that and have real expertise in the delivery of your outcome, that's where you can get that confidence to know that, you know what? I know that I can actually get this result. I know that I'm going to actually increase this opportunity by $100,000. So in fact, I'm not going to bet 10 to 1. I'm betting 2 to 1. So I'm going to charge $50,000 to get them $100,000. And you know what? At the end of the day, they're going to be incredibly happy when you deliver that $100,000 return. Now, I know that there are people listening right now that are saying, but my outcomes are not tangible. My outcomes don't have a dollar figure. But there's a great book about measuring anything, and I might put that in the show notes, actually. Measure Anything. It's a fantastic book because it does really show you that you can measure anything. But one of the tricks that I use for measurement is to actually look at what is something similar or something that gets a similar result that has a high value to it. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that we're doing personal consulting. We're not even doing business consulting here, right? And we're helping someone deal with addiction, all right? So as a consultant, or you may be a therapist or an advisor or a coach, all sorts of things. They've got an addiction. What is that addiction costing them? Well, let's put dollars to the side because, yes, there are quantifiable dollar value things on addiction. But what else is it costing them? What is it costing them in lifestyle? What is it costing them in relationships? Now, for them to get those relationships back, for them to do certain things other than get rid of the addiction to make that happen, what would it cost them? Well, for many people, to change a lifestyle, they need to change their environment. They need to move from this place to that place. They need to have a whole new change of life. They might move to another state, another city, whatever it might be. What's the cost of movement? What's the cost of moving your environment? What's the cost of buying a house? What's the cost of these things? And so look at the tangible things around them where there are expenses. And then you can say very, very simply, well, how much is this going to cost, they'll ask. Well, it's going to cost far less than you having to move to another city. It's going to cost you far less than losing your relationship, right? What would that cost? And you can actually ask them. You can hot potato the question, pass the hot potato to them and actually get them to answer it. And funnily enough, they will come up with an answer. What is the cost of a relationship? And you'll hear priceless, but let's put some words on it, right? What's the cost of time? What's the cost of years? What would you spend to get it back? All right. And then, just come in at a rate, at a percentage of that you're comfortable and confident in. And the 1 in 10 is often the one that people pick. Right? So you can do 1 in 20 if you're being conservative, you can do 1 in 10. But I think the key here is to stop looking at hourly rates, because hourly rates are for service delivery people. If you want to be an employee, then clock on and clock off. But my understanding of you listening to this podcast is that you don't want to be that employee. It is not for you anymore to be employed by somebody, which is why you've actually started your practice, which is why you've been working your practice for some time. You're no one's employee, right? But we don't want you to even be a service provider. We don't want you to get paid on delivery. We don't want you to be assessed by a thing that was delivered. I know in previous businesses where we did a lot of website design or digital solutions, people would look at a website and say, what is that website worth? And really had to step outside of what the website was worth, but what does the website give us? What is that worth? What is the outcome of that? So if you want to increase your prices, stop looking at hourly rates. Stop even quantifying and trying to work it out on a spreadsheet. How many hours will this thing cost me? Right? Look at the value you're providing, and if you're not confident in the value you are providing, then that is something to look at. It is time for you to do one of two things. Practice, improve, develop, get better. All right, that's one of them. Or stop trying to get better in 100 different things. This is why niching and streamlining works so well. When you're doing the similar sort of work over and over and over again, you get incredibly good. You get very good at the processes and the steps. You get very good at managing situations. Funnily enough, I'm the past national president of Professional Speakers Australia, which means I've done a bit of speaking in my time. Now, early days of me wanting to get good at speaking, I asked one of the mentors, older, cranky sort of guy, I love him to death now. I said, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to get good? And he goes, go and speak at Rotary gigs. And I thought, I need to go and speak in front of, 20, 30 older people who aren't interested in what I've got to say. And I was so wrong. It was an amazing place to actually do practice because there was such a diversity of thought and a diversity of personalities in those rooms. And what I learnt to do was speak in front of people who were engaged in what I've got. Speak in front of people who are not engaged in what I've got. Speak in front of people and have the mayor literally walk in front of me while I'm doing my presentation and start talking to the room. Speak in front of a presentation when they're listening to me, and as soon as the food arrived, they turned around and faced their back to me, right? So they could get to eating. What do you do in those situations? How do you handle those situations? Well, if people turn around to eat, guess what? You walk around the other side of the room and you start talking to them from that side, right? But there are situational, contextual things through experience, through practice, through repetition that you will get that will give you the confidence to know that you're going to be able to get this business, this outcome, no matter who is going to be in the room, no matter what the situation is, because you've experienced that many, many, many times before. So get good, right? Busy getting good, and start to focus on some real key outcomes you're very good at providing, some key problems you're very good at solving. And by getting better at those things, not only do you get confident, but you're far more likely to get those results every single time and surpass them. And so when you promise $100,000, you deliver $3, right? You deliver $300,000 and you blow that client away, right? They keep you coming back again and again. And I'll tell you what, they're more than happy to pay your rates at that point. So number one, focus on outcomes. Number two, make those outcomes tangible. How do you make those outcomes tangible? Now, I'm not saying you need a guarantee, but it's interesting what the guarantee actually does for us in the fear. What's the feeling that you get in your body when you think about guaranteeing the work? Well, it's that sort of work that's actually going to drive you to improve and get better and actually be the best in your space at doing what you do. Consulting, it's a consistent evolution. Consultants die when they stop learning. Consultants die when they stop evolving. I've seen it happen before, and that's not you. You are listening to this podcast. You're looking for new ideas, insights, energy, and one of the ways that you can do this is to always look beyond the horizon that you're currently on and say, what is next? Where do I need to actually improve? What's coming down the pipe? How do I actually take my learnings and my lessons and apply that contextually to a new environment that I find myself in, enabling you to look through a new lens, and at the end of the day, be able to communicate even better than you've ever done before. So, outcomes, we're focusing on those, making those outcomes tangible. Definitely number 2. And number 3 is making the decision to raise your prices. Now, I know that sounds very simplistic, but it's incredible how many people haven't raised their prices in years, if not a decade. And maybe today, dear listener, is the day when you decide to actually increase your prices. What would happen if you doubled your price? Would people say no? Maybe. Maybe then you need to get a little better in the communication process, because, again, price is not the key. Value is the key. So if you want to actually get better income, if you want to get higher fees, then you need to be focusing on higher value. And value isn't always seen in the eye of the beholder. It actually needs to be communicated. And your ability to communicate that, and how you communicate that, and how you actually even get the client to divine the value for you, an amazing way to actually go about it. Not defining the value for the client, but actually getting the client to define the value of this outcome for you. It's amazing how much easier it is to actually charge what you deserve. And so, just even think of that, right? Just turning it on its head. Ask them where they are now. All right, where I've got a business of $500,000, and where do you want to be? All right, well, we want to be, we want to be at $2 million. Okay, well, that's $1.5 million. What's that worth you? What's it worth you to get that? Well, it's worth $1.5 million. What if you could speed that up? What if it was easier? Right? What if it was easier to get the next 1.5 million than it was to get the first 500? What if you could get it faster? What if you could get it with less effort? What if you could get it with less people? What if you could get it with less expenses and less costs? There are so many different ways that you can actually present value. What if you could do it with less risk? What if you could do it more affordably? There are so many different ways to look at it, and really have the client define what it means for you. Because if they're looking at an addition of $1.5 million, then maybe this project is worth $150,000. And it's far more about how they get it, how effectively they get it, how efficiently they get it, than it is to how many hours you're working on the outcome with them. So, what are you going to do? Are you going to review your prices? Are you going to look at increasing your prices? For those who don't have a set fee, which I think is quite a good thing, because we're looking at value, right? Your next project, your next engagement, your next outcome that you're going to be looking at, maybe instead of writing the 2, write a 4. Instead of writing a 5, write a 10. Just change some of those figures up. Worst case scenario, they say no. But if you do it in the right way, if you haven't just sent a proposal without you, you can have a conversation about price. You can have a conversation about how they can say yes. So if you're interested to know more about that, if you're interested to know how to have conversations where you can actually get higher fees, if you're willing to have conversations about how you can speak to outcomes rather than speak to activities, then I would love you to connect and reach out and say, Russell, how would I do that? in my business. Right? It's a really useful process, just having a chat. Currently I'm available, which is good, because I have a business program called The Forge. And while I'm not recommending the Forge business program to you, it may be worth looking at some point, but that's more of a case of being invited to it. So I'd love to have a conversation about what challenges you have in front of you, whether that be me referring you to the right person or whether I can help you directly myself. In the meantime, I would love you to subscribe to this podcast. Subscribe to the podcast so you can get more episodes just like this. I'd also like you to leave a review. If you've liked what you've seen, then it's weird because you probably listened to it on the podcast, but you may have watched it on YouTube. I'd love you to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, all those great things as far as a review. And also, go to consultingbusinesspodcast.com because there you'll find resources that actually support everybody who listens to this show, and there'll be useful resources that you can download and actually use in your business. Till next time, my name is Russell Pearson. Absolutely stay passionate, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye for now. Thank you for joining us on Your Consulting Business Podcast. Make sure to click the subscribe button for future updates, and also make sure to go to consultingbusinesspodcast.com for goodies made especially for you by yours truly. I will see you on the site.